Hi, I'm Jen Long, Head of Product Design at Sizzix, and I'm here to share an overview of my seasonal collection launching on September 1st. I absolutely love designing for Christmas. There's something magical about that time of year, and making for the holiday season just has an extra special feel to it, whether you're making cards, decorations, or gifts for your friends and family. So this is a very small but considered collection. There's only 6 designs in total, but what's unique about it is that it was developed to work together between your Thinlits, your embossing, and your stencils. So you can pick one design and make a fully finished card or project, or you can incorporate the other products and make something with a lot more versatility and value. So let's take a look at how these all work together. First off, let's take a look at our Thinlit sets. So we have 2 sets here, and these were actually designed to be full A6 card fronts. So you can make a completely finished project just by using everything that's on here. And if we flip these over, you can see that these are just jam-packed with parts and pieces. And I really tried to simplify these as much as possible. So all the layering pieces are one die, and I also included crease rules so you have an easier time kind of layering those pieces together. Sentiments are included in both sets, and this is just a simple layering sentiment, the winter wishes. But this design, this is actually a negative fallout die. So all these little pieces fall out. Don't worry, you're not going to have to worry about lining up and layering all of those tiny little pieces together. But it is a quite intricate die. So I definitely would recommend using the precision base plate when you use this and cutting it at an angle just to make sure that all those little parts and pieces cut out. And then also when you're layering all these tiny things, definitely recommend using some adhesive sheets to adhere those on, and also our intricate craft tool set. This is really nice for just picking up and placing all those little pieces and then removing any dry adhesive that can, run amok. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the 2 embossing folders in the collection, and you notice the designs look a little similar to the Thinlits that we just looked at. And again, that's, as I mentioned earlier, that's because they're designed to all work together. But first, just looking at the embossing folders, these are 2 sets designed to be full A6 card fronts. So you could just simply run these through your machine and add some simple techniques. I'm always blown away by the levels of intricacy and detail that we're able to achieve with our embossing folders, and adding some simple techniques just like inking or using some of our opulent papers. These are so beautiful and lovely. Getting some gold. Even using our reveals paper, where you're able to sand away the top layer. Actually, let's do that right now just for fun. So we'll take our little sanding block, and again, you just get such a nice technical look from something, just from doing something that's not that complicated at all. So we're sanding. Okay. And you get, again, this really beautiful card front from both designs. But let's talk about how these work with the Thinlit sets. So in each Thinlit set, there is a framelit. It's kind of the biggest die in each set. And these are sized to work perfectly with the embossing folders. So the first thing I'll show you is, this is the framelit set from the Winter Wishes Thinlit set. And I've already cut this out on just a piece of our white paper. And I'm going to take my embossing folder, and you can see that this is sized to fit perfectly with the embossed design. And what you want to do is just use that silk screen that's on the front, and you're just going to line this up. And let's see. Just line those up and make sure that everything is kind of covered. It's really best to just pick 2 spots and make sure those 2 spots are aligned, and then everything else really falls into place. I like to put a little piece of maker's tape just to hold it in place. And again, the beauty of maker's tape is that it holds it in place without ripping your paper. Then let's go ahead and run this through our Big Shot machine. Ooh, I got a little crooked. And I am going to run this through 2 times just to make sure I get that full 360 degree of dimension. Pull this out. And see, your maker's tape goes away without ripping anything. And now you have a very nice embossed card front that has a unique cut to it. So that's with the Winter Wishes set, and with the May Your Days Be Merry and Bright set. So again, this is kind of how the embossing folder looks on its own. And you can tell that the framelit has been designed to work around this nice little foliage grouping here. So what you want to do is actually, you want to cut out this piece first. You always want to cut before you emboss, because if you go to emboss after you've cut something, the pressure of the rollers is just going to smush all that nice definition and dimension that you've made in the embossing. So I've cut this already, and you're going to get your folder out, and same thing that you did before, you're just going to use that silk screen and you're going to line up your paper. You can do one at a time, you can do two at one time if you want to be brave. Again, I really advise using some maker's tape just to make sure that everything stays in place. But after you've run this through your machine, you get this nice, beautiful embossed piece, both of them actually, that look like this. And why would I want this? You're saying, because it seems like a duplication of what you have here. But really, if you add a little bit of some dimensional tape to the background and just peel those guys off, you can layer that right on top of there. And that just gives you a little bit of an extra kind of technique, a nice look and feel, some extra height, and just kind of makes it a little fancier. So that's kind of the first look at how Thinlits and embossing work together. And now we're going to move on and take a look at how stencils can play into the mix as well. Okay, now things are going to get really exciting. We've looked at the dies, we looked at the embossing, and now we're going to incorporate a third product into the mix, which is stencils. So similar to the first two designs, these are layering stencils that both make full A6 card fronts. So you can very well, pick one of these up, make a finished card, and be on your way. But if you want to get super exciting, which I do, we're going to combine these with embossing and Thinlits. And there are a couple tips and tricks in here that I think could help you out. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I found to be the most successful way to approach this. So this is our standard layering stencil of A6 size, and we always have these kind of guidelines around the workspace. So one just kind of gives you your workspace, and that's just part of the manufacturing process, but I added a second guideline in here, and I'm actually going to ink on the actual stencil just to make sure that you guys can see it on camera. And I'm just gonna hold this right up and get on my tippy toes so you can see. But there's a secondary guideline right here. And that is what you're gonna wanna measure to and line your card up to, because this, my friends, is the same size as one of our 3D embossing folders, which was no accident. So this interior measures 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. So if you trim your paper to that size in advance and kind of line that up, and know that that's going to work in your embossing folder, you will definitely thank me later. So to get everything on here and make sure that I keep it all layered and in place and prevent any mishaps, I'm going to just eyeball this and make sure it's where I want it to be. And heck, you can add a piece of tape, why not, just to make sure that that stays there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the stencil onto the holes of my stencil and stamp tool, and then just kind of lay it down and keep it in place. So this is stencil number 1. I'm going to get some ink, and let's go ahead and just add ink to this, just so you can see how the process starts. Again, these are 4 layering stencil sets, both the Winter Wishes and the May Your Days Be Merry and Bright. High levels of intricacy in both of them, so you do want to kind of pay attention to how you're rubbing the ink on there, just to make sure you can get in between all those little nooks and crannies. So that's layer number 1, pretty standard stenciling procedure. We're going to pick this up, and you can just see that, there's 3 more layers attached to it. Once you finish all your layers, you get something that is going to look like this, just to jump ahead so we don't waste time continuing with that. But here is where we get fancy. So like I said, the 6 1/4 by 4 1/4, that was designed to fit perfectly onto the smaller side of your 3D embossing folder. So I really wanted you to not have to worry about lining things up. You can really put this in here, kind of close it and go. Since you do have the silk screen though, it doesn't hurt to take a look, make sure that all of your inking parts are lined up and it's where you want it to be. So I'm just gonna make sure those are lined up. I'm happy with that. I am gonna put a piece of maker's tape on both sides, just because I don't want to chance anything slipping, especially while we're filming on camera. And I'm going to close my folder. I'm going to bring this back over to my big shot, lay it down on my platform, and let's run this through. So we go in, we go out, let's remove that tape. Ooh, and you can see how nicely it's now embossed in all of those areas where you've stenciled. How fun is that? Ooh. But it can even go further than this, and let me show you how. So let's see. We have, remember this good old framelit that we use? We just cut this out a few minutes ago and embossed it. This also works with your stencil design. So let's say that I remembered to not emboss that first. You could have cut this out first after you've done your stencil, and you would get a piece that looked like that. How pretty is that just on its own? So you could then, from here, add some dimensional tape, put that on there to get a little more height to it, or you can take this, put it back in your folder, run it through again, and get a piece that is embossed. And this can also now go on top of your card front. So that's really what I mean when I say that there's so much value and versatility in this, because you can emboss, you can thinlit cut, you can stencil, you can do all of it together. There's so many options to how all these different technologies work together to just give you the most amount of options possible. And from here, I would say that this is what I would go for a finished card, where I've done my stencil, I've done my embossing, I cut these out, and again, I die cut before I emboss just to make sure that the pressure of the rollers didn't smush any of that raised detail. And then I put some dimensional adhesive and had those pop up. What a beautiful way to look like you've done something super complicated, but due to the alignment of the stencils and even the stencil and stamp tool, how the paper's sized to work with the folders, really wasn't that complicated. So that's the Merry and Bright. But I do want to look at the Winter Wishes folder as well, or the Winter Wishes stencil set as well, because I'm going to stencil that a little differently, because you can stencil after you emboss. So this one, remember, we stenciled first and then we embossed. So what we're going to do here is, remember this guy, we embossed and cut this one a little while ago. And let's just grab my first stencil set for that. So this one is another one where you really want to look for two places to line it up. Really, this arch that you see right here, this is going to be your best friend in lining this up. So I have my embossed piece of paper. I'm going to put my stencil on top of it. I'm going to look for that arch line, and I'm going to look for this one little pokey leaf here, and I'm going to look for this other little pokey leaf there. And once I have both of those in place, I'm confident that the rest of all these flowers and other things are going to line up just perfectly as I go through the 4 stencils. And just so I don't have anxiety or worry about it messing up, you can also put a piece of maker's tape on it. But since I've used all mine and I don't see any more here, we're just going to go ahead and go for it. And again, you kind of just worm it down almost. Lay it. And let's get some ink. So from here, here's something on this one also. So you can see, these parts are really meant to be green, and the center of your flowers, as you can see here, I kind of want to make pink. So I've just cut a little square of our masking film, and if you're not familiar with this, our masking film is fantastic. It comes in a really large size, doesn't tear your paper, but does block all of the ink that you would want to mask out. And I'm just going to take this and I'm going to cover up my flower areas. That's because I want to be able to cleanly just ink in green and not worry about the pink getting messed up. So that's covered. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to go for it. And you can start to apply your medium through the stencil onto your embossed surface. So depending on what you're comfortable with, either embossing first or stenciling first, there's just yet another way to approach the designs and have even more variety in how you make your projects. Okay, so done with that green. Let's peel this up. and get that masking thing off. Easily comes off, doesn't mess up your stencils at all. You can even reuse it. Does it tear? No, it doesn't tear. You can even place it here just to make sure that you don't cover your green with the pink now. And let's grab some pink and start to get in there in those little areas. And let's just pick this up and move it over here, why not? And now we can safely color the inside of our flowers without messing up any of that green. And you can pick this up and you can see what a beautiful kind of start you have to your piece. Now, if you go along and continue adding ink, you're going to end up with something that looks like this, which is very beautiful and nice on itself. And here you can simply just apply it to a card front. Do want to take a look at how this would look if we added some of the Thinlits back into the mix. So I do have some pieces prepared. So this again is the flower section from the original Thinlits design. And I have backed this with adhesive sheets. You remember I did mention in the beginning of the video, adhesive sheets are going to be your buddy when you're working with all these intricate pieces. And I just love, look at how cool that is. This layers perfectly right on top of there. You could use dimensional tape if you wanted to add a little more depth to it, but I am going to use adhesive sheets, and then I am just placing this right back there. Again, I mentioned that there's some crease roll on here. You probably can't see that on the camera, but that's going to help you place these exactly where you want them to go. And then lastly, also I did mention in the beginning, I put all the layering pieces on one die. So these are all those little tricky berries. These are all on one die set, so you don't have to worry about cutting them out individually. Cleanly cut out. I put adhesive sheet on the back of them, and using our little tool, you can simply kind of just place them and move them around wherever you want them to go without having the stress of losing them or not sure where they're going to go. But now again, you can see this is a beautifully designed stencil, emboss, Thinlit set that makes this perfectly completed card. Okay, now let's take a look at some of the projects that you can make from the collection, but I also want to show you just some of the sketches that I did to inspire the designs that were actually made into Thinlits and in the embossing folder and the stencils. So I did bring my sketchbook, and I'm just going to open this up. So here you can see, here you can see that is the wreath design from Winter Wishes. I didn't end up keeping the bird. That just felt a little weird to me once I got started. So bird lost him, but you can see how the drawing really translated quite nicely to the Thinlit set in the embossing folder, especially in the embossing folder. All these nice details were really brought through beautifully. And then in the Merry and Bright, not as much here because I drew the little holly bow here, but really you just flip that over, so you only had to draw one of them. But I thought it was really nice to see how the designs originated and where my thought process was when I was drawing them. And looking at some projects, I really have to give a shout out to Jess Jones for making all these beautiful projects for me. I'm going to start with my absolute favorite one, which is the May Your Days Be Merry and Bright. So like I mentioned beforehand, that sentiment is a die cut that removes the negative, and you definitely want to back that with a stronger contrast color or back it with a metallic like she did here. And then, you know, she included that framelit shape that goes with the embossing folder and the stencils, but she layered the Thinlit dies right on top of it. And I just love how that looks. This is my absolute favorite project from the whole collection. And then moving on again, the Thinlit set, Winter Wishes, just showing you how nicely you can just use one of the designs. You don't have to use all three of them if you're not comfortable or you just want to use one or two. But again, just the beautiful layering techniques that she did with the whole Thinlit set. And then some of them just, you know, a little more simple. She used the embossing folder and just layered that one detailed Thinlit on top of there. So I didn't even talk about that. I didn't even honestly think of that before, but she did a really nice job of doing that. And then here, this is embossing and stenciling on top. So during the demo, we actually stenciled and then embossed this one. I mean, she did this the other way around, the same way that we did the Winter Wishes. So it's really nice to see the effect of embossing first and then stenciling with this guy. And here, what a creative idea, because she stenciled the outside and she masked the sentiment, the May Your Days Be Merry and Bright, is not in here, and she put the copy and text for an invitation. So this just goes to show that you can use this for a variety of different things, not just seasonal cards. Look at that, beautiful. Again, use the framelit shape to cut out and then stenciled on top of it. Here, I messed up and got some ink on here, but I did want to show the cool effect of the gold with the embossing folder and the framelit cut. Again, using the stencil to stencil on top of the embossing. And here again, you know, you don't have to use the sentiment here. She covered it up for a really beautiful photograph. What a lovely Christmas card that would make. And then going beyond cards, these can be used for tags as well. Look at these cute little winter wishes tags. How cute would that look on a little package? And then a scrapbook page where, you know, a really nice asymmetrical design with the wreath and then finishing off that corner with a bunch of little Thinlits. So all in all, only 6 designs in the whole collection, but such a variety of different projects you can make. So I hope all of you enjoy this when it launches in September and you have as much fun creating with it as I did designing with it. Thanks so much for watching.